The flames of dawn, Mariana sewed until late, stitching dreams together on cheap fabric. The small house breathed tiredness, a mixture of soap and reheated coffee. The children slept huddled together, like puppies seeking warmth. The clock on the wall ticked, insistent as an omen. Outside, the night chewed away the silence of the dirt street. Rogerio arrived staggering, smelling of a bar and feeling a sense of longing. He flung open the door. Tripping over his own shadow, he threw himself onto the sofa like someone sinking in a leaky boat. Just a cigarette, he murmured, lighting the ember in the darkness. Mariana squeezed her eyes shut, tired of arguing with the dawn. She gathered up the threads and locked the needle case in the closet. He thought about water, bills, bread for the next day. The body asked for a bed, the mind, a respite from fear. Rogerio snored softly, a volcano about to spew ash. On the curtain, the fire started as if whispering a secret. First there was a glow, a shy tongue of orange, then a sharp crack that split the silence in half. The flame rose up the hungry fabric of the dry forest. Mariana smelled the sweet, bitter scent of danger. He opened his eyes and saw the night turning red. The children. The cry came from her like an ancient birth. He ran down the hallway, bare feet biting into the cold floor. He woke Lucas up with a hug and dragged Anna by the hand. He picked Pedro up, his heart beating out of his chest. The air was already scratching his throat like ground glass. In the living room, Rogerio did not wake up, trapped in his own torpor. Mariana shook her shoulder, begging for movement. The fire licked the roof, spitting embers like inverted rain. Get up, for God's sake. But love didn't answer. The sofa turned into a pyre, and she stepped back to avoid turning to ash. The front door burst into light and thick smoke. Mariana covered her children with a wet blanket. He pushed the world out, stumbling into the yard. The neighbors appeared like figures, water in shaking buckets. The house roared, a wounded animal, spitting out memories in charcoal. Rogerio. Someone asked, and she bit into the silence. The firefighters arrived late for what was too urgent. Hoses screamed jets, but the fire already had an address. Mariana hugged the three of them, a triangle against the hot wind. In the sky, sparks rose like prayers that had lost their way. When the last beam groaned, the night became hollow, exhausted. The siren fell silent like a sob finally defeated. There remained a smell of the end, of something that will never return. Mariana looked at her hands black with soot and guilt. Within them, the future trembled, small and alive. She fell to her knees, not from praying, but from collapsing. The children cried without understanding the magnitude of the loss. A blanket over shoulders, a cup of water, hands next to each other. Still, the cold came from inside, where the fire had passed. In silence, a promise was born: I won't let you fall. Between ashes and guilt, dawn found the house reduced to coals and memories. Thin smoke streaked the sky, like notes no one reads. Police cordoned off the land with yellow tape and distancing. Mariana answered questions with her voice cracking with barbs. Every word was a step into the minefield of the past. Rogerio's body came out covered, a stone weighed on her chest. She wanted to feel anger and only found emptiness and confused forgiveness. He thought about the fights, the requests for change that never came. In the last cigarette, lit as a sentence without appeal, guilt clung to her like wet clothes in winter. The children asked about toys, the bed, the smell of home. Mariana embraced answers that didn't exist, just hugs. The social worker talked about shelter, paperwork, new beginnings. New beginnings sounded like too big a word in his mouth. She nodded, because to deny it would be to fall back into the fire. The neighbors whispered in shadowy groups, poor thing. But also, marrying one of those. The street had eyes and mouths, no whole hands. Mariana raised her chin as proudly as possible. Those who have lost their roof learn to live within their own name. In the makeshift shelter, metal beds and rough sheets, children running, tired adults, crushed hope. She shared a loaf of bread, counted coins, sowed silence in each child. A ray of sunshine piercing a heavy cloud, in itself, a hole that the day could not reach. In the afternoon, the press arrived with cameras and urgency. Claudia, the reporter, had the eyes of someone who had cried for others. Can I hear your story? He asked, as if asking permission. Mariana took a deep breath, measuring the dignity in the edge of her voice. I don't want handouts. I want work. I want to rebuild my home. The interview ran through the corridors like a good wind. Mariana spoke of fire, but she spoke more about love for her children. She said she knows how to sew, clean, and carry bricks. He said he's not afraid of service, just of giving up, when the camera went dark. Courage remained lit. The night brought a less cruel, almost human silence. She looked at the three of them, lined up like a living promise. He sang an old song, a patchwork of childhood. His eyes burned, but now it was because of fatigue. She slept sitting up, guardian at the door of tomorrow. The next day, volunteers arrived with clothes and bread. Mariana thanked with both hands, and with both she took on the job. He washed pots, swept floors, sewed bars until it hurt. Guilt whispered, I should have woken him up. She replied, it's to keep them alive. As the sun hung low, a man watched from afar, simple clothes, a look that recognized ruins inside. He listened to the interview and came back as if breathing heavily. His name was Duda, and he said he was an employee of a donation. He offered materials and hands to rebuild the house. Mariana looked at his hands, clean and available. He saw in them the chance to build walls without taking on debt. I'll help too, he said, with his debut firmness. The children smiled, curious about the kind stranger, and the day, for the first time, ended without a taste of ash. The voices of judgment. The sun rose again over the street where the house had been. Now all that remained were ashes, twisted iron and the smell of memories. Mariana returned to the field, holding her children by their small hands. Each step among the rubble was a silent confession. She knelt down and picked up a burnt button, the remnant of a lovingly sewn blouse. The neighbors watched from afar, somewhere between pity and curiosity. Some offered prayers, others, disguised whispers. They say he was drunk, it was God who wanted it that way. Mariana didn't respond. She guarded her dignity like someone guarding a piece of bread. He knew the fire hadn't just burned wood, it had burned his reputation. In the shelter, the nights were long and humid with crying. You could hear the snoring of sad adults and the sobbing of children. Mariana sewed clothes donated to other homeless people. Each stitch was a silent prayer, an attempt to belong again. Tiredness didn't sleep, it just changed beds. Claudia, the reporter, appeared once again, with kind eyes. Your story touched a lot of people, Mariana. We want to help. Mariana smiled dully, distrusting pity. Help how? I have nothing to sell, just my hands. Claudia just held his hand, a rare gesture in the age of cameras. The following story aired on Sunday, on a national program. It showed Mariana holding her children. Smiling with teary eyes, I want to work, I don't want pity, she said, her voice trembling. On screen, the country saw not a victim, but a living woman, and among millions of gazes, one pair stared in silence. Eduardo Montero watched from the leather armchair, an untouched glass in his hand. A widower for years, the businessman knew that emptiness inside. He saw in the woman on TV something that money never bought, faith. That woman, he murmured to himself, as if hearing a call. That night, he decided to meet her, but not as a millionaire. In the following days, Mariana began to rebuild the land. With pieces of wood and donated bricks, he built small walls. The hot wind brought dust and tiredness, but also hope. The children played with clay, inventing castles in the middle of the ruins. She smiled for the first time, and the smile hurt. It reminded her of life. In the afternoon, a pickup truck stopped in front of the land. A man in simple clothes came down, carrying a clipboard. Good afternoon. I'm Duda, and I've come on behalf of the Montero Foundation. Mariana wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked at him suspiciously. Foundation? Is that charity? He asked, his voice firm and wounded. No. It's work, he replied, smiling slightly. We help rebuild, but you also get your hands dirty. Her eyes shone with acceptance and weariness. Then let's start tomorrow, she said, determined, and the first brick of the new life was laid there, between ashes and faith. The man who came from the shadows, Eduardo, now Duda, arrived early. Before the sun overcame the dew, he took off his jacket, put on a simple shirt and a worn cap. I wanted to be seen as a man, not as fortune in disguise. He brought tools and a calm look, the kind that doesn't weigh you down. Mariana was already waiting for him, with black coffee and determination. I thought you weren't coming, he said with a half-smile. I promised, didn't I? He replied, adjusting the hammer on his belt. The work began silently, the sound of nails filling the air. The children watched, enchanted by the construction man. Each hammer blow seemed to extinguish a little of what the fire had left. Between breaks and sips of coffee, small conversations arose. Duda spoke of other clients, without revealing who they were. Mariana talked about when she sewed wedding dresses. I made clothes for dreams, until the fire came and dressed everything in ash. He looked down, feeling the weight of her sad poetry. In the following days, the walls began to rise. Duda brought more material, and Mariana worked alongside him. They mixed cement and laughed at the children's antics. The sun was burning, but the laughter was new, fresh as rain on dry ground. In the midst of reconstruction, something invisible and sincere was born. One afternoon, Duda dropped a hammer and laughed at himself. Mariana, without thinking, laughed along, the sound light, almost forgotten. I haven't laughed like that in a while, he confessed, wiping his face. Then keep this one, he said quietly. It's yours back. The silence that followed said more than 1,000 words. At night, he would return to the empty mansion, taking off his disguise of simplicity. I walked through the cold corridors, without pictures or laughter. He remembered Mariana, the way she blew the dust off her hands. There, in the sterile luxury, he realized that his soul still smelled of ash, and he smiled, because that woman was giving him back his breath. The next morning, Mariana arrived with a piece of sweet bread. I made it to say thank you. He accepted it like someone receiving a rare gift. You are different from the people I help, he said. It's because I don't want help, he replied firmly. I want life. Duda looked at her and, for the first time, was afraid of falling in love. As the sun set, the house began to take shape as a home. The new walls smelled of promise, not of the past. The children ran, laughing, while the wind shook the tiles. Mariana looked around and murmured, even fire gets tired of burning. Duda smiled, unaware that the fire was now burning inside him. The hands that rebuild, the sound of the hammer mingled with the voices of the children playing. The once dead ground was now breathing again, slow and alive. Duda, still hiding under the guise of the simple man, smiled. Mariana worked beside him, hands steady, eyes determined. The sun was burning, but there was a kind of light in every gesture she made. You work like a bricklayer, he joked lightly. I just don't want my children to sleep on the floor, he replied. She wiped the sweat with her forearm and laughed, briefly, sincerely. It was the first laugh that came effortlessly after the fire, and Duda kept that sound like someone collecting gold in clay. In between, he observed the details, her cracked hands, the way he spoke to the children, the simple way he said thank you. Mariana had the same strength in her eyes that he had lost years ago. Since he was widowed, his life had been a succession of silences. Now, silence had a voice, and her name was Mariana. One day, rain fell without warning, and work stopped. They ran onto the makeshift porch, laughing like children. Mariana looked at the drops running down the new boards. It seems like heaven is helping to wash the soul, she said dreamily, and it seems he decided to send company for that, replied Duda. For a moment, they were silent, just listening to the water falling. The smell of wet earth mixed with the scent of coffee. Duda wanted to say who he was, tell the whole truth, but with every smile of hers, I feared the spell would be broken. He preferred to be the simple man she respected. For now, that same day, at night, Mariana sewed a new curtain. She used donated, flowery, uneven pieces of fabric. When it was hung, the wind played with the colorful flowers. She looked and smiled. The house, finally, began to have a face, and Duda, watching, thought he had never seen such humble beauty. By the end of the month, the skeleton of the house had become a home, tiles laid, walls erected, windows with bright curtains. The smell of new paint mingled with the children's joy. Mariana thanked him, but Duda modestly deflected the credit. I only painted what you courageously built, he said. That night, she invited him to dinner with the family, plain rice, beans, and laughter echoing across the cement floor. Duda looked at the smiling faces, feeling something reopen inside. It was the kind of home that money could never buy. There, he knew, he no longer wanted to leave. When he left, the moon was full over the new roof. Duda looked back, seeing the windows lit up like stars. Something was burning in my soul, but this time, it didn't hurt. It was the good warmth of someone who finds their way back, and he whispered to himself, she doesn't know it, but she has already rebuilt more than one house. Echoes of the past, the news of the reconstruction spread through the city like a light wind. Some praised him, others were suspicious. Whoever helps like that wants something. Mariana pretended not to hear, but fear still lived close to her heart. At night, the nightmares returned, the fire, the screaming, the smoke. She would wake up sweating, her heart racing, her children sleeping beside her. Duda noticed the tiredness in her eyes and tried to lighten the weight. You've been through hell. Now it's time to rest. Hell comes back when we close our eyes, she replied. He wanted to hug her, but held back. Her pain was too sacred to be touched without permission. During the day, visits became routine. Duda brought new tools, sometimes toys, sometimes bread. The children already called him uncle. Mariana, by instinct, tried to maintain emotional distance, but the heart has its own rules of approach. One afternoon, she found him sitting in the backyard, watching the sunset. What do you think about when the day is over? He asked. I think about what can still begin, he replied, looking at her. Mariana looked away, feeling her face blush like a teenager. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was full of truth. Duda, however, carried his own ghosts. He had lost his wife in an accident and never loved again. Since then, he lived between construction work, meetings and disguised solitude. Seeing Mariana rebuild her life rekindled something forgotten in him, the courage to try again, even after the fire. One morning, Mariana found a small rose on the wall, a simple note, with shaky letters, to remember that everything blooms. She knew, without asking, that it came from Duda. He kept the flower between the pages of the Bible, along with a secret. The heart, previously gray, began to gain color. The following week, Claudia returned to record a new story. He showed the progress, the house built, the children smiling, but something about the reporter intrigued her. Who was that man? A friend, Mariana replied, with a slight smile. Claudia realized, that friend already lived in her heart. Duda avoided the cameras, always discreet, but Claudia recognized him from somewhere, a face seen in the society pages. He said nothing, just watched, respecting the secret. I knew that certain truths should only be revealed when love is ready, and love, there, grew silently between the cement and the flowers. That night the sky was clear and the wind was gentle. Mariana sat on the porch, sewing until late. Duda arrived bringing blue paint, her favorite color, to paint the gate, he said, smiling. Blue. It's the color of hope, he replied, and she smiled back. For the first time, Mariana felt she could trust. Not in a man, but in fate, which might still be good. As the gate gained color, her world also came to life. The past was burning, but the future was beginning to burn beautifully, and, in Duda's heart, the flame of love began to grow, silent and certain. The first true smile. The days went by peacefully, stitched together with routine and hope. Mariana no longer cried every night, now she dreamed in silence. The walls were up, the roof was firm, and the yard was alive. The children ran free, laughing again, as if the fire had never existed. And Duda, he was always there, without asking for anything other than to be there. One afternoon, the sun lay lazily over the newly made garden. Mariana brought 2 cups of coffee and sat next to Duda. The two remained silent, listening to the wind play on the new tiles. She looked at him and saw something different. Peace, perhaps, a kind of peace she didn't even remember what it felt like. You don't talk much, she commented, smiling slightly. Talking too much scares away the good things, he replied, chuckling. She liked the answer, and for a moment she forgot her old pains. The laugh that escaped her was sweet, unafraid, weightless, and Duda knew, in that instant, that he was lost, and saved. That night, Mariana dreamed of water, water cleaning walls, washing the fire, bringing the scent of flowers. He woke up with a light heart, as if the dream were an omen. He got up early, made coffee and baked homemade bread. When Duda arrived, the aroma made him smile before he even entered. You cook like you pray, he said, taking a piece. I cook like someone who needs to keep going, he replied. Their hands touched unintentionally, quickly, but intensely. The world seemed to stop for a second, as if in a sigh, and the two pretended not to notice, so as not to scare what was being born. At noon, a neighbor appeared with curious eyes. This guy does a good job, huh, Mariana? She commented mischievously. Yes, he does. And with respect, he replied, firmly and calmly. Duda lowered his gaze, hiding a shy smile. In that instant, she realized, she wouldn't let anyone hurt her anymore. Later, Duda brought a rose bush wrapped in paper, to decorate the yard. And to remember what? She asked. That every flower needs ash to grow, he replied. Mariana held the seedling and looked up at the sky. Moved, and when he planted the flower, he also planted the first trace of love. When saying goodbye, Duda hesitated, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't. Mariana looked at him gratefully, and the silence was enough. Night fell with the smell of paint and wet earth. Inside her, something new began to blossom, and, for the first time, my heart beat without guilt, only with longing. The secret in the walls, the house, now almost finished, seemed alive, breathing new memories. The open windows let the wind play with the colorful curtains. Mariana ran her fingers along the walls and felt the touch of a new beginning. There, each brick had a name: strength, faith, patience, love, and in every corner, the trail of Duda, the man who painted hope. Duda arrived every day, always with something simple in her hands. A can of paint, a piece of fruit, a toy for the children. Never money, never luxury, only presence. Mariana noticed the silent generosity and was confused. Who was that man who helped without asking for anything in return? One afternoon, while he was painting the wall, she asked, "Do you have a family, Duda?" The voice was soft but curious. "I did." He paused, staring at the dripping ink. "I lost it years ago." Mariana didn't insist. She understood that he was also carrying ashes. Their shared silence was a kind of prayer. At night, alone, she thought about him, in the shy smile, in the way he listened, in the calm he brought. He was frightened by what he felt. Love? Gratitude? Confusion? It's too early, he said to himself. But the heart, stubborn, no longer obeyed reason. Meanwhile, Claudia was preparing a new article, a story of overcoming. Mother rebuilds house with mysterious help. The video showed Duda from behind, working next to her. And it was enough to catch someone's attention on social media. His face was familiar, that of Eduardo Montero, the widowed businessman. The news began to spread, slowly, like embers in the wind. Mariana still didn't know anything. She lived the simplicity of her faith. Duda, on the other hand, felt the siege closing in around his secret. He feared that the truth would destroy the bond built on honesty of the soul. But he also knew, love cannot be built on lies. A late afternoon brought rain and confession. "Duda, why do you help a stranger like me so much?" Mariana asked. He took a deep breath, looking away. "Because you remind me of what it means to be alive." She was silent, feeling her heart beat fast, but before he could say anything, a bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, and the moment passed. That night, Duda left with his chest full of fear, fear of losing her, fear of hurting her, fear of confessing. Mariana stared at the blue gate, now dripping with rain. The rose he had planted swayed firmly in the storm, and she knew, love, when it is true, survives even the storm. The secret revealed, the sun had barely risen when Claudia appeared again. He had a tense smile on his face, the kind that hides big news. Mariana welcomed her with coffee and discreet curiosity, but deep down, a premonition throbbed like a hot coal under his skin. Claudia looked at her and took a deep breath before beginning. "Mariana, do you know who Duda is?" he asked cautiously. Mariana frowned, confused. "Hey, he's the guy who helps here." "Why?" The reporter placed her cell phone on the table. On the screen, a headline: "Millionaire businessman Eduardo Montero is caught helping a mother who lost everything in a fire." His face, smiling sideways, the same simple smile she knew. The world spun, and the ground seemed to move away from beneath her feet. His hands were shaking, his heart was racing, a mixture of anger and disappointment. Everything that was sincere suddenly seemed like a lie. "He lied to me, Claudia. Maybe so he could be treated like a man, not like money." But Mariana was no longer listening. Inside her, the fire was starting again. When Duda, or Eduardo, arrived in the afternoon, she was waiting for him at the door. Her gaze was cold as wet stone. "Why didn't you tell me who you are?" he asked, without shouting. "Because I wanted to be someone ordinary compared to you," he replied, but her silence hurt more than any words. "So that was it?" Mariana continued, her tears held back, a good deed to appear on television. A story to redeem yourself, no. He interrupted, desperate. I just wanted to help. Lying. She took a step back, as if the distance could protect her. The fire in her eyes was now hotter than the flames that had destroyed her home. Eduardo tried to explain, but the words were lost in the wind. Mariana's face was a mixture of pain, anger, and disappointment. Go away. Mariana, please, go away. Her voice broke, but her tone remained firm. He recoiled, helpless, weighed down by a guilt he couldn't name. That night, the rebuilt house seemed to collapse again. The walls that once held him, now echoed with memories of him. The lovingly painted blue gate had become a symbol of deception. Mariana cried until she had no more tears, only dry sobs, and the fire that had once almost killed her now burned within. Eduardo left in silence, his heart broken like the first time he lost someone. He drove aimlessly, his eyes filled with tears and his soul empty. He knew he had destroyed the trust of a woman who only wanted the truth, but I also knew, I couldn't give up on her, because for the first time, he loved someone more than he loved his own redemption. The silence after the storm, the following days fell upon Mariana like invisible stones. The news spread, and the neighbors whispered even more, see? Nobody helps for free. Rich people never do anything without wanting to be seen. She remained silent, enduring the pain with dignity and bitter coffee, but at night, the silence was too heavy to carry alone. The children asked about Uncle Duda. Will he come back, Mom? Asked Pedro, the youngest. Mariana just smiled, with tears in her eyes, and said, he went to take care of other houses, my love. But inside, she knew the house he rebuilt was her very heart. Claudia tried to talk, but Mariana avoided the subject. You have to understand that he didn't mean to deceive you, he insisted. Yes, I did. Only those who lie choose silence. Mariana replied, but when the reporter left, she felt the emptiness grow. Anger began to mix with longing, and that scared her. During a sleepless night, Mariana got up. He went to the backyard, where the rosebush that Duda had given him was blooming. The petals opened under the moon seemed to laugh at his stubbornness. She knelt down and wept softly, without witnesses. Why does love always hurt first? He whispered to the wind. Meanwhile, Eduardo lived isolated in his silent mansion. He refused meetings, ignored phone calls, lost his appetite. The man who had everything could not find peace. Mariana's face haunted him in every shadow, in every white wall, and the guilt ate at him more than the fire ever did. A week later, Mariana received a letter. The envelope was simple, with no sender, but my heart recognized it. Inside, just a folded sheet of paper with handwriting. I wanted to rebuild your house, but it was you who rebuilt what I was inside. If hating me is the price for having known you, I will pay it without regret. The tears came again, but now they burned differently, not with pain, but with memory. She kept the letter inside the Bible, next to the dried rose. The fire in his chest was beginning to lose strength. In place of the flames, a calm ember appeared, made of understanding, and, for the first time, Mariana asked herself, does forgiveness also rebuild? The next day she put on her best dress and left early. The sun beat down on the blue gate, and the wind carried the smell of wet earth. Without really knowing why, he began to walk towards the impossible. Maybe it was just curiosity. Maybe it was love trying to survive, or maybe it was fate, beckoning a new beginning. The truth in the ashes, the road to the city seemed longer than ever. The wind messed up Mariana's hair, but her heart remained strong. In his pocket, the folded letter, a reminder and a call. Each step was a silent conversation with one's own destiny. She didn't know what she expected to find, she just knew she had to go. The gate to Edward's mansion was large and cold. The security guard hesitated, but she showed him the letter with trembling hands. Tell him you're the woman from the rebuilt house. He'll understand. He waited at the entrance, surrounded by perfect gardens and expensive silence. When he appeared, his eyes said it all before the words, Mariana. His voice was low, almost a plea for forgiveness. She took a deep breath, trying to contain the turmoil inside her. I didn't come to fight. I just came to understand. Why? He asked firmly. Eduardo hesitated, his gaze lost on the ground. Because I wanted to be seen. And you thought that lying would be I thought so, for the first time, yes. There was a silence full of truths that time cannot erase. Eduardo talked about his wife's death, the loneliness, the emptiness. He spoke of how he saw in her not a victim, but a living force. You didn't ask for anything, Mariana. You just fought. And that saved me. Her tears fell, slow, not from pain, but from empathy. You didn't need to be a millionaire to help me, she said. I just wanted honesty, because I've been deceived too much. He nodded, his eyes welling up. And that's what I give you now. He opened a small box, inside a charred piece of wood. It's from your old house. I kept it. I wanted to remember where everything was reborn. Mariana touched the burned piece carefully. The rough texture seemed to speak to his own scars. I never thought anyone would guard my ruins. It was in them that I found my new beginning, he replied, and in that moment, she understood that forgiveness can also be beautiful. Before leaving, Eduardo accompanied her to the gate. I don't expect anything, Mariana. I just wanted to tell the truth. Sometimes that's all we need, she replied. They both smiled, and the air felt lighter, almost new. The pain gave way to something calm, almost hope. That night, back in the rebuilt house, Mariana lit a candle. He placed it on the window, as if signaling to his destination. The children slept peacefully, and the silence was sweet. She looked at the flame and thought, fire destroys, but it also illuminates. And for the first time, the brightness didn't scare her. The return of the light. In the following days, Mariana's heart felt different. It was no longer a burnt field, but fertile land after the rain. She returned to her sewing with enthusiasm, singing softly as she worked. The children noticed the difference. Mommy is smiling again. And it was true. She smiled. Even without knowing what would come next, one morning, a car stopped in front of his house. Eduardo descended, without escort, without apparent wealth, just a man. He held a can of paint in his hands and had a pleading look in his eyes. I came to help paint the gate. Again. She joked, laughing, this time, if you let me, I want to paint next to you. He replied. Mariana hesitated, but his smile dissolved her doubt. They painted together, the sound of their laughter mingling with that of the children. The blue color shone even brighter under the morning sun. With each brushstroke, it felt like a wound was closing inside her, and with each look, he loved her more for exactly who she was. After they finished, they sat down in the shade of the rose bush. The open, red flowers smelled of promise. You shouldn't have come back, she said lamely. I couldn't stay away from where I learned what it means to start over. Mariana looked at him and, for the first time, she didn't see guilt, she saw love. The afternoon fell golden, spilling light through the newly painted windows. Time, once an enemy, now seemed an accomplice. I don't know what to do with all this, Eduardo. Neither do I, he replied. But I know I don't want to lose. And what came next needed no words, just a hug. Claudia, who was passing by to visit them, saw the two from afar. He smiled, keeping to himself the scene that no camera would capture. The woman of ashes and the man of shadows had found the light, not a ready-made happy ending, but a true beginning, and she knew, some stories don't need headlines. At night, the children fell asleep early, and the silence was light. Mariana looked at the blue gate, now more beautiful than ever. The moon reflected on him like a seal of peace. Her heart, once fragmented, was beating whole again, and somewhere inside her, love had finally come back to live. The flames of love. Time began to pass with a kind of sweetness that Mariana had never known. Mornings brought the laughter of children and the sound of tools in the yard. Eduardo appeared every day, sometimes with flowers, sometimes just with a look. He did not speak of love, but love spoke for him, in every gesture, and she, little by little, stopped running away from this feeling that grew like light. Mariana no longer called him sir. Now it was just Eduardo, said with affection and respect. They understood each other in the silences, in the pauses, in the long looks. She sewed while he sanded a door, and the air was filled with peace. It was as if the entire universe had stopped just to watch them. One afternoon, he arrived with a simple box in his hands. Inside, a light blue dress, sewn by her months before. I bought your work at a bazaar, he explained, smiling. I thought you should use it, not sell it. She laughed, touched, and when she put it on, Mariana felt beautiful in a way the mirror never showed. after dinner, they sat in the backyard, under the star-studded sky. The wind brought the scent of flowers and the memory of rain. "I never imagined loving again," said Eduardo, in a low voice. "Me neither," Mariana replied, looking at the floor, but when their eyes met, silence did the rest. The kiss came like sunrise, shy, then inevitable. There was no rush or guilt. Just surrender and calm. His hands held her face with the delicacy of someone holding life. Mariana closed her eyes and let love cross her fear, and for the first time, the fire inside her didn't destroy, it warmed. In the following days, the house seemed to breathe differently. There was music, there was lightness, there was laughter that echoed off the walls. His children called him Uncle Eduardo, and he loved them as his own. Mariana began to believe again that destiny could be generous, that maybe God really knew what he was doing with fire, but even amidst joys, her heart still wavered. "Sometimes I woke up scared, afraid of losing everything again," Eduardo noticed. But didn't insist, he just stayed, and this staying was the most beautiful love she had ever received, the kind of love that doesn't demand, it just heals. One night he brought a small gift, a golden key. "The key to what?" Mariana asked curiously. "For my heart," he replied, laughing tenderly. She laughed too, but the gesture touched her deeply. For the first time, she wanted to believe that she deserved to be happy. As he left, the moon reflected in the blue window of the house. Mariana watched him walk away and felt something new, peace. It was no longer loneliness, it was good longing. Love, after all, didn't hurt, it just made sense. And her heart, once burned, now glowed with soft embers. The wedding in the ashes, time passed, and the rebuilt house became a full home. The flowers in the garden multiplied, coloring the backyard with life. Mariana sewed dresses for the entire city, now recognized. Eduardo remained by her side, not as a savior, but as a partner, and together, they transformed the ordinary into an everyday miracle. One morning he arrived with her children by the hand. Pedro carried a small wooden box, smiling knowingly. Eduardo knelt, his words choked with emotion. "Mariana, the fire took your husband, but it gave me a reason to live. Will you let me take care of you and your little ones for the rest of your lives?" The world seemed to stop. The children clapped their hands, laughing without understanding the magnitude of the moment. Mariana cried, not out of sadness, but out of gratitude. He remembered everything, the ashes, the cold, the guilt, the loneliness, and he understood that each pain was just the path to that yes. The wedding was simple, in the backyard of the house itself. The colorful curtains swayed, the smell of cake filled the air. Claudia was there, filming with hidden tears. The neighborhood, previously curious, now applauded tenderly, and at the improvised altar, Mariana entered in blue, the color of hope. When I said yes, the wind blew hard and shook the flowers. It was as if the entire universe confirmed that promise. Eduardo wiped her tears with the hands that once built walls. "You are the strongest woman I have ever met," he said, and she replied smiling, "No. I'm just what's left after the fire." The party lasted until sunset, simple and full of laughter. Children ran, friends sang, and love filled the air. At the back of the yard, the rose bush he planted bloomed bright red. Mariana looked at her and thought, anything that burns can bloom. And the sky, tinged with orange, seemed to applaud the new beginning. At night, when everyone had left, the two of them were left alone. They sat on the porch, looking at the stars reflected in the blue gate. Mariana rested her head on his shoulder and sighed. "Now I understand, the fire didn't destroy me, it purified me." Eduardo kissed her forehead and whispered, "And he taught me what it is to love." The children's laughter echoed from inside the house, soft as prayer. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time, it wasn't scary, because she knew, true love doesn't come to save, it comes to stay. And in the ashes of the past, Mariana finally found home, a home within her. Lit, calm, eternal. From ashes, life. The years passed with the delicacy of someone who respects old wounds. The sun coming through the window of the rebuilt house seemed warmer. The children's laughter now echoed like music, full of the future. Mariana walked barefoot through the yard, observing the red rose bush. It was the same one that Eduardo had planted, and which now flourished in abundance. Time had been generous. The pains, which once screamed, became silent scars. Fear gave way to calm, guilt, to pride. Mariana was no longer the woman of the fire, She was the woman of the new beginning, and as I looked at the blue gate, I still saw the reflection of the day it all began, after the wedding. She and Eduardo opened a small social project. It was called Flowers from the Ashes, and welcomed women in situations of violence. There, Mariana taught sewing, patience and faith. Every point given by those women was a cry transformed into hope, and each story told brought out the brilliance of the survivors. "Are you Mrs. Mariana from television?" asked a young woman. Mariana smiled humbly. "Yes, I am, but just call me Mariana. They say you lost everything. And I got it all back, my dear." The girl lowered her eyes, moved, and Mariana understood that love also multiplies when it is given. Eduardo continued to be the same man of simple gestures. I traded meetings for afternoons helping with the project. Painting walls again, he still laughed when she called him my favorite bricklayer. The two worked side by side, just like in the beginning, sweating and laughing together, the millionaire and the common woman, equal, because both were born from the ashes. One afternoon, Claudia returned for a final interview. I wanted to know what was left of that story that once moved the country. Mariana looked at the camera and smiled serenely. "The fire destroyed my house, but it also burned everything that held me." "And what came next?" asked the reporter. "Life," she replied. Her image, now mature, filled the screens again, but this time, not as a tragedy, as a testament to rebirth. The women watching wept, not out of pity, but out of strength, because they saw in Mariana something that every wounded heart understands, that there is beauty even in what fire tries to extinguish. At night, the house was silent and peaceful. Eduardo and the children, now grown up, ate dinner amidst laughter and memories. Mariana looked at them and felt her chest fill with gratitude. Everything she feared losing, fate had returned in double, and for the first time, she didn't wait for tomorrow, she just lived it. When the moon rose high, she walked into the garden. The rose bush was laden with flowers, heavy with life. She touched the petals and closed her eyes. Taking a deep breath, the ashes of the past no longer hurt, they were fertile soil, and inside it, the fire finally rested, transformed into light. Mariana looked up at the sky, and a smile slowly spread. "Thank you, my God, for letting me burn, because that was the only way I learned to be reborn." The breeze blew lightly, swaying the red flowers, and the woman who was born from the ashes was finally whole and free. Sometimes life needs to burn down what we were to reveal what we can be. The fire did not come to destroy Mariana, it came to purify, and among the ashes, she found love, faith and the power to start over.